You're lucky we even keep you here, Emma. Most women would have quit by now. That's what my senior officer, Captain Reynolds, said to me in front of the whole precinct. The words hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken on duty. The room went quiet. Even the sound of the coffee machine stopped. He smirked like it was a joke, but it wasn't. Everyone knew it. I'd been a police detective for 6 years. I worked cases nobody else wanted: domestic violence, sexual assault, the kind of calls that tore you apart piece by piece. But apparently, all my work didn't mean much next to his ego. That morning, I was supposed to brief the team about a new case, a missing teenager. Instead, Reynolds cut me off mid-sentence, tossed my file aside, and started explaining my own report to the room. Like I was invisible. I remember gripping the edge of the table, so hard my knuckles turned white. "Understood, sir," I said, forcing the words out evenly. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. But the humiliation didn't end there. Later that day, when I went to log evidence in the system, I realized my access had been restricted. My case files, the ones I'd worked for weeks, were locked. When I asked IT, they said Reynolds had reported a security concern. I knew exactly what that meant. He was setting me up. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights bleeding through the blinds. My badge was on the coffee table, next to a cold cup of coffee. I stared at it and thought about all the nights I'd stayed late, all the cases I'd solved, all the women who'd looked at me like I was proof they could survive too. And now I was being pushed out, quietly, cruelly. I picked up my phone and opened my messages. There it was, a text from Reynolds. "Emma, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Take a leave, clear your head. I'll handle your caseload." It felt like my lungs had turned to stone. He wasn't just humiliating me, he was erasing me. I'd seen this kind of thing happen to others. Women who spoke up got labeled emotional. Women who stayed quiet got ignored. And women like me? We got crushed between both. But that night, something inside me shifted. I walked to the mirror and looked at myself, hair pulled back, eyes red but steady. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt angry. And beneath that anger, something stronger. Resolve. If he wanted me silent, he'd picked the wrong woman. They say anger fades overnight. Mine didn't. It sharpened. The next morning, I showed up at the precinct early, before most of the team arrived. The hallways smelled like stale coffee and old paper. My desk was exactly as I'd left it. Files stacked neatly, a half-broken pen, a photo of me and my late father on graduation day. He'd been a cop too, honest, stubborn, the kind of man who believed justice wasn't a slogan. That morning, I swore to him silently, "I'm not backing down." I started by printing every email thread I had with Reynolds. Every order, every case note, every message that showed I'd followed protocol. Then I backed up my reports to a personal drive. It wasn't paranoia, it was survival. By noon, he walked in. His cologne hit the air before he did, expensive, smug. "Emma," he said, pretending to sound casual, "I hope you got my message. You should really take a break." I didn't even look up. "I'm fine, sir. Still working the missing teen case." He smirked. "That case isn't yours anymore." I looked up then. "On whose authority?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Mine." The room went quiet. He leaned closer, voice low enough that only I could hear. "You don't want to make this ugly, detective. You've already been under review once. Don't add insubordination to the list." In that moment, my stomach dropped. Under review? That was a lie, or worse, a trap. I walked out before he could see the fear on my face. Outside, I sat in my car, staring at the dashboard. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked like a stranger, pale, tight-jawed, trembling slightly. That's when I called Internal Affairs. Not to file a report yet, just to ask questions. The officer on the line was polite but cautious. "Yes, Detective Lawson, I see your name here. There's an ongoing administrative inquiry into conduct irregularities under your badge number." I gripped the steering wheel so tight it squeaked. "What kind of irregularities?" "Sorry, ma'am, I'm not authorized to say." They had already moved against me. I ended the call and just sat there in silence, the hum of traffic outside blending with the pounding in my head. He was trying to bury me before I even opened my mouth. But here's the thing about being cornered. You stop worrying about playing nice. That night, I called a friend, Alicia, a lawyer I'd met through victim advocacy work. She listened quietly while I explained everything. When I finished, she said just one thing. "Start documenting everything. Names, dates, actions, words. And Emma, don't talk to him alone again." That night, I created a folder on my laptop. Reynolds' file. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going down quietly. The next morning, I pinned my badge to my belt again. Not out of pride. Out of defiance. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who'd ever been silenced in a room full of men who thought power made them untouchable. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't feel brave. It feels terrifying. That's exactly how I felt walking into work that Monday. My stomach was tight, my palms slick with sweat, but my face was calm. Reynolds was already there, joking with two of the guys from Vice. When he saw me, his grin froze. I didn't say a word. I just walked straight to my desk and turned on my computer. He could feel it. Something had changed. That week, I did my job like nothing was wrong. I attended briefings, took notes, handled my calls, smiled when I had to. But behind that calm, I was gathering proof. Small things at first, the way he changed case assignments without proper forms, the times he lost evidence in high-profile investigations, the way he always reassigned women after disagreements. It wasn't just about me anymore. During one night shift, I stayed late in the evidence room, officially to close paperwork, unofficially to review the surveillance footage. There was no sound, just Reynolds walking in and out of the secured area with files he wasn't authorized to remove. I saved the footage on a flash drive and slipped it into my wallet. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped my car keys twice before leaving the building. Back home, my apartment felt smaller than ever. I sat on the couch, the flash drive sitting between my fingers like a loaded weapon. Alicia called. "You're quiet," she said. "I've got something," I whispered. "And it's not just about harassment anymore. It's corruption." She was silent for a long moment. Then, "Emma, if you're right, you're about to step into something dangerous. You ready for that?" I didn't answer right away. My heart was pounding. But in my mind, I saw the faces of women I'd met, the ones who never got justice because someone like Reynolds didn't take them seriously. "Yeah," I said finally. "I'm ready." The next morning, Reynolds called me into his office. He didn't look smug this time. He looked cautious. "IA wants to meet with you," he said, his tone controlled. "They'll ask questions about some case reports. It's routine." Routine. Right. When I left his office, my phone buzzed with a message from Alicia. "If they corner you, don't defend him. Tell the truth. Calmly. Fact by fact." That meeting was in a gray conference room on the 4th floor. Two officers from Internal Affairs sat across from me, expressionless. The questions came fast. "Did you access restricted evidence logs? Have you had disagreements with Captain Reynolds? Did you ever feel retaliated against?" My pulse was racing, but I stayed steady. "Yes. Yes. And yes." When I handed them the USB drive, the younger officer raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Proof," I said quietly. "Check the date stamps. You'll see who really accessed those files." For the first time in weeks, I felt the ground shift under his feet, not mine. That night, I sat on my balcony, listening to the city hum below me. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what was coming. I'd already lost too much to fear losing anything else. The next few days were strangely quiet. Too quiet. Reynolds stopped making jokes. He stopped talking to me at all. I could feel the tension every time I walked into the precinct. Eyes following me, whispers cutting off mid-sentence. It wasn't paranoia. I'd been a detective long enough to know when people were told to keep their distance. By Wednesday, the IA officers had started their formal interviews. They didn't say what they'd found, but I could tell something had landed. That night, when I walked out to the parking lot, my car lights flickered, both headlights smashed. On my windshield, there was a sticky note. "You should have stayed quiet." I stood there in the cold, staring at those words. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. That was his warning shot. His way of saying he still controlled the narrative. But not anymore. I took a photo of the note and the damage, then filed an official report with IA first thing in the morning. The woman at the desk, Officer Green, looked uncomfortable as she typed. "Are you suggesting this was connected to the ongoing inquiry?" "I'm not suggesting anything," I said, keeping my tone level. "Just reporting facts." The following afternoon, IA suspended Reynolds pending investigation. It wasn't public yet, but word spread fast. I'll never forget the look on his face when he saw me that day in the hallway. He'd been called out of a meeting, papers in hand, his badge taken by his superior. Our eyes met. His lips curled slightly, not in anger but disbelief. like he couldn't believe I'd done this to him. He took a step toward me. "This isn't over," he muttered, voice low. I looked him dead in the eyes. "You're right. It's not." When he walked away, the air in my lungs finally loosened. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But the relief didn't last. That weekend, a story leaked. Anonymous sources accusing me of falsifying reports and using unauthorized surveillance. It was all over local law enforcement forums within hours. My phone buzzed nonstop. Some messages were supportive. Most weren't. One text from an unknown number read, "No one's gonna trust a liar with a badge." Alicia called that night. Her voice was firm. "This is retaliation. Classic smear tactic. Don't respond, don't panic. The truth will hold." Still, it hurt. Not because of the lies, but because of how easily people believed them. That Sunday, I drove to the ocean. It was cold and gray, waves smashing against the rocks. I stood there, coat zipped to my chin, wind tearing at my hair, and I thought about quitting, just walking away. Then I remembered something my father used to say when I was a rookie. Courage isn't what you show when you're winning. It's what you hold on to when you're losing. I stood there until the sun dipped below the horizon. And then I made a promise to myself. If they were going to drag my name through the mud, they'd have to do it while I was standing tall. By Monday morning, my name was mud. Not officially. Not yet, but inside the precinct, I could feel it. Conversations stopped when I walked by. People looked away too quickly, pretending to be busy. The same men who once asked for my advice on cases now avoided eye contact. It's strange how fast respect disappears once you start fighting back. Reynolds might have been suspended, but his influence was still everywhere. Old favors, quiet loyalties, the kind of unspoken power that doesn't need a desk or a title to exist. At roll call, Lieutenant Parks didn't even mention my name. He just said, "Detective Lawson is currently under internal review," like I wasn't standing right there. I clenched my jaw but said nothing. Let them whisper. Let them doubt. I knew what I had, the evidence, the truth, and most importantly, the nerve to keep showing up. That afternoon, Alicia and I met at a small diner off Highway 41, a quiet place where cops rarely went. She slid a thick envelope across the table. "I found more," she said. Reynolds tampered with at least 3 case files. 2 of them involved missing evidence. One's connected to a known informant he had personal ties to. I blinked. "So this goes beyond harassment?" "Oh, it does," she said, leaning closer. "It's corruption. And once this becomes official, it's going public." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt cautious. Because in our world, truth doesn't protect you. It just puts a bigger target on your back. When I got home that evening, I noticed my front door slightly ajar. My heart dropped. I pulled my weapon instinctively, stepping in slow. The living room light was on. Nothing looked broken, but drawers were open, papers scattered, couch cushions slashed with something sharp. My laptop was gone. I called it in immediately. Patrol arrived within 10 minutes, but they treated it like a routine break-in. No forced entry, no fingerprints, no witnesses. Just a violation that felt personal. When they left, I sat in the middle of the floor, shaking. My flash drive, the backup of everything, was in my wallet. But still, they'd been inside my home. Alicia showed up half an hour later, holding takeout and a calm face. "Eat something," she said. "I can't." "Yes, you can." She sat beside me. "They're scared, Emma. That's what this is." Fear dressed as intimidation. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But that night, sleep wouldn't come. Every sound, a car outside, a creak in the wall, made my heart jump. By morning, I knew I couldn't stay passive anymore. I called a journalist I trusted, Jenna Morales from the Seattle Ledger. She'd covered several cases I'd worked before, exposing system failures no one else wanted to touch. When she picked up, I said, "I have something big, but it has to be airtight." Her voice was calm, professional. "Then let's make it airtight. Bring me the documents. Bring me the truth." I hung up, grabbed my wallet, and looked in the mirror one last time before heading out. My reflection wasn't the same woman who once stayed silent in a meeting full of men. This version of me looked tired, but unbreakable. The day I met Jenna, the rain hadn't stopped since dawn. Seattle looked washed out, gray, slick, tired. I pulled my hood tighter and walked into the small coffee shop where we'd agreed to meet. She was already there, laptop open, a notepad full of scribbles. When she looked up, her expression wasn't pity. It was focus. That mattered. "Emma Lawson," she said, standing to shake my hand. "You ready to make this official?" I slid the folder across the table, copies of everything I had, emails, memos, photos, timestamps, that damning footage from the evidence room. Everything's verified, I said. If you dig deeper, you'll find more. She studied my face for a moment. You know what this could mean for your career, right? I nodded. I know exactly what it means. She leaned forward. And you're sure you want to put your name on this? Yes, I said. Because I'm done watching men like him keep their power, while women like me lose ours just for speaking. She didn't say anything else, just nodded and got to work. For the next week, things moved fast. Too fast. Internal Affairs reopened multiple cases Reynolds had handled. The city's legal department started preparing for public fallout. And inside the precinct, silence thickened into tension so heavy it was hard to breathe. Some officers supported me quietly, a pat on the shoulder, a small nod in the hallway. Others glared like I'd betrayed the entire department. On Thursday, the article dropped. Front page. Headline bold enough to stop traffic. Senior officer accused of evidence tampering and retaliation. Investigation expands. My name was in the second paragraph. And just like that, the storm began. Reporters swarmed the station. The police chief called an emergency meeting. Public trust was shaken. Questions flooded in. That afternoon, Reynolds showed up unannounced. He was out on administrative leave, but his arrogance hadn't gone anywhere. He found me in the hallway, his face tight with rage. You think you've won something? He hissed. I met his eyes steady. No, I just stopped losing. He stepped closer, voice low and sharp. You think they'll protect you? You're naive. You'll go down with me. I smiled, a small, tired smile. Maybe, but at least I'll go down telling the truth. Security escorted him out minutes later. Still, the damage had been done. The whispers turned into noise. The hate emails poured in. The chief called me into his office and said, "You're brave, Lawson, but you've made a lot of enemies." I didn't make them, I said quietly. They were always there. I just stopped pretending not to see them. That night, when I finally got home, I sat on the couch, too tired to cry, too wired to rest. The city outside was loud, sirens, rain, life moving on. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number again. You think the truth saves you? It doesn't. For a second, I froze. Then I turned the phone off. Because whoever that was, they didn't understand something crucial. This wasn't about safety anymore. It was about dignity. And once a woman rediscovers hers, she doesn't give it back. The next few days felt unreal, like watching my own life unfold from outside a window. The news spread fast, faster than I ever imagined. Reynolds' name was everywhere, TV, online, radio. Reporters camped outside the precinct, waiting for a comment. The department issued a brief statement, an ongoing internal matter. But the silence spoke volumes. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt exposed. Everywhere I went, I could feel the weight of eyes, some filled with admiration, others with resentment. A few whispered, "She's the one." Like I was both hero and heretic at the same time. Then, one morning, I got a call from Internal Affairs. "Detective Lawson, we'd like you to come in. There have been new developments." I didn't ask what kind. I just drove there in silence, the same route I'd taken hundreds of times before, though it felt different now, heavier. When I arrived, Officer Green met me with a thin smile. He confessed. For a moment, I didn't process it. What? Reynolds. He admitted to doctoring files and intimidating subordinates. Not all of it, of course. He's still minimizing, but enough to confirm your claims. I stood there, hands in my pockets, heart racing. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was exhaustion, deep, bone-level exhaustion. "Thank you," I said quietly. On my way out, I passed the press again. Flashbulbs shouted questions. "Detective Lawson, did you know about his actions before this year? Do you think this exposes systemic bias?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I wasn't ready to make this about everyone else, not until I could breathe again. Later that night, I met Alicia and Jenna at Jenna's apartment. We sat around her kitchen table, pizza boxes open, files scattered. Jenna grinned as she read from her screen. "They've confirmed a full audit of all his cases. The mayor's office is involved. You did it, Emma." I stared at the greasy napkin in my hand, unsure what victory was supposed to feel like. I just told the truth. Alicia looked at me. Yeah, but most people never do. For the first time, I let myself smile, small, tired, real. Then came the email, an official notice from HR. They were reinstating my cases, clearing my record, and scheduling a formal apology from the department. I sat there, staring at the screen, and something inside me finally cracked. Not from sadness, from release. Months of fear, anger, humiliation, finally giving way to something softer. Peace. But peace didn't mean forgetting. The next morning, I went to the precinct early, before anyone else arrived. I walked to my desk, placed my badge down, and just looked at it. That small piece of metal had nearly broken me, but it had also helped me find out who I really was. Not just a detective, a woman who refused to be silenced. When my team started trickling in, a few of them stopped by. "Glad you're back, Lawson. You did the right thing." Simple words, but they hit harder than any apology from the brass. As I logged in to start my first report in weeks, I whispered to myself, "You survived. And you spoke. That's enough." It's strange how quiet justice sounds when it finally arrives. No fireworks, no applause. Just the soft hum of a city moving on, and me, standing in the middle of it, finally breathing again. 2 weeks after the investigation closed, I was invited to speak at a departmental ethics seminar. At first, I wanted to say no. I wasn't ready to stand under fluorescent lights while people dissected my pain like a case file. But Alicia said something that stuck with me. "Emma, your story isn't about what they did. It's about what you refused to let them do." So I went. The auditorium was half full, officers, cadets, a few civilians. I walked to the podium, hands steady now. I didn't need notes. I looked out at the faces, some curious, some skeptical, some quietly proud. And then I said it. I used to believe silence kept me safe. That if I stayed quiet, played along, worked harder, the system would protect me. But it didn't. And maybe it never will. What saved me wasn't silence, it was truth. And the moment I spoke it, I realized, fear only works when you cooperate with it. The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, people started to clap. Afterward, a young female officer came up to me. She couldn't have been more than 24. She said softly, "I thought about quitting last month. But after hearing you, maybe I'll stay." That's when I realized what real power feels like. Not control, not revenge, but the ability to make someone else believe they can stand too. When I got home that night, I took my badge off and placed it back on the coffee table. The same spot it had sat on the night I almost gave up. This time, it didn't look like a burden. It looked like balance. A reminder that strength doesn't mean you don't get scared. It means you don't let fear decide who you are. I made myself a cup of coffee and stood by the window, watching the city lights blink against the night sky. I wasn't the same woman anymore. The humiliation, the betrayal, the fear, they hadn't broken me. They'd built me. And as I turned off the light and let the silence settle, I thought to myself, he thought I'd be too scared to speak. He was wrong. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Write it in the comments.